Welcome to episode 3 of the the Band Retrospective podcast. My name is Mr. Insomnia, and we are going to get into episodes 7 and 8 of Making the Band 1. This is the O-Town era of Making the Band. Hopefully, my neighbors are a little bit quieter. I know on one of my recordings, I heard one of my neighbors' kids kind of crying, and I think you might actually hear my upstairs neighbor running their faucet right now. So hopefully you don't hear that. But anyways, let's get into the episode. We're starting at episode 7 of season 1 of the O Town Making the Band 1, and basically we're still at the house. Mike and Ikaika and Ashley are having a talk about Ikaika's happiness. He's trying to figure out if he wants this for himself. Um, he's kind of questioning it. His brother and his father are like, do it for the family, do it for the family, because they don't have a whole lot of money, so we this is a way to get some money. Um, Ashley's like all in. Ashley wants to make money, wants to make a living with music, and they are really running that faucet up there. Um, Ashley tells Ikaika, "Hey man, talk to me anytime. I have, even though I want it, hey, we need to know if you're in." So now we're back at rehearsal. Surprise, surprise. Um, Ikaika, we find out that Ikaika is studying pre med and has to take 3 tests tomorrow. They're about to leave home for a few days. I should let you know that. That we'll get into that a little bit later, real later. Still rehearsing All for Love. Surprise, surprise on that. Um, the final five, they're almost there to decide on the final five. Uh, Ashley is talking. He does talks to his mom, but he doesn't talk to his stepdad about arts. His stepdad was in a band in the '70s, and they did a lot of drugs. Lou gives the boys a contract. Let's talk about these contracts. I'm going to quote 2 articles here. The first one is from ABC News. This article was written, you can actually find it online. It was written on December 12th, 2019 by Lauren Efron, Gwen Gowan, and Chris Kilmer. And in this article, they actually tell you that the Backstreet Boys from 1993 to 1998 made $300,000 total. Now you got to think about this. That's 5 years. They'd broken through in the U.S. in 1997 with a hit. Um, Now, in this, they actually sued during this time. They actually found this out. They sued, and see, let me just pull it up here. Let me just in 1998. I'm quoting the article here. Backstreet Boys filed a lawsuit claiming they had only received $300,000 since 1993, while Perlman had made $10 million. Perlman defended his business practices, saying that he had spent $3 million on Backstreet Boys to launch their careers before the band had been profitable. Perlman was ousted. Now, this is the result of the lawsuit. Perlman was ousted as Backstreet Boys manager, but the settlement agreement they reached gave him $30 million, and he continued earning a portion of the band's profits. Because what Lou would do is not only get management fees, he would also be a sixth member of the band. Now let's go to the Guardian. Also has an article about Lou Pearlman's great business practices. And this is an article dated, when was this? This was April 9th, 2019. I'm just trying to find who the author is. I just cannot find the author. Apologize to the author. I think the author's at the bottom here. So let's find this article. I have the article up. I'm just trying to find this. There's something great. There's just a great quote here in this article. Let me just find it. Where is it? Where is it? God, I'm sorry that this is like I had it up and now I have the article up. I'm just trying to find where this quote here. Let me just like in this article, he said he was entitled to 90% of the band's of NSYNC's profits. Oh, here we go. Okay, here Bass and his bandmates managed to jump clear of the wreckage using a burial clause in their contracts. This is how NSYNC got out of their contracts. Bass and his bandmates managed to jump clear of the wreckage using a buried clause in their contracts that stipulated Perlman had to sign the group to a U.S. label. They were signed to a label within the German major BMG to declare it null and void. The judge in the case was flabbergasted at Perlman's claims that, according to his contract and ownership of the band name, he was NSYNC and therefore entitled to 90% of their earnings. She ruled for the band and the implosion of the Perlman empire began. So basically, these contracts are very shady. Again, he was also listed as a sixth member of the band. So needless to say, Perlman, these contracts are probably very shady. Ikaiko gets the contract. He's like, dude, I want to make money and marry Malia, who's his girlfriend. Oh, there's one more thing I want to mention about Perlman's contracts. Trevor did an interview stating how bad the contracts were, and Ashley and boy band Khan talks about how they were making less than minimum wage. So this is basically a contract where you're basically going to be in, like, it's a kind of an indentured servant contract. Lou states when you come back, contracts must be signed. So he's basically putting the pressure on him, like, hey, hey kids, you want to be a big star, you got to get these contracts signed immediately. So there's like, so basically he's trying to rip these kids off without them knowing it. I mean, the Lou contracts are just, Lou is just, man, this is where he's at his most shisty. This is where I just get disgusted. Now, while eight have to be signed. I'm sorry. Lou only finalizes 5 because the 3 who don't make the band don't have are not. And they're not attached to the contracts because they didn't make the band, so they don't have to. They're not going to be under Lou Pearlman's management. Mike talks about mixed emotions of the contract. Lou states, "Hey man, it's about time when we gotta get these contracts signed now." Trevor reads the contracts and he reads that they're going to get $40,000 for the first album as an advance, $100,000 for the 7th album as an advance. Trevor is excited about the contract. Brian says, "Hey, I need my lawyer to read this." Ashley calls his mom and says, "Hey, mom, I'm going to buy you a car. I hope that car was on a payment plan if he bought it." We go to the hot tub with Jacob and Trevor. Basically, Jacob said, "Hey, look, I've wanted a record deal by the time I was 21, and I'm getting it at 19." So he's really stoked. Then we see in Jacob's confessional, he says the next 10 years he's going to be tied up in contracts. This could end up awesome or screwing him. He's done interviews since then where it was actually option B that what happened. Ikaika talks to his mom about decision. She says it's his decision. The boys say their goodbyes at the airport. They're kind of like hugging and stuff and bro hugging, but it's like they're going to see each other in 4 days. They're just going back for Christmas break, basically. So now there's a conversation at the airport while Trevor and Jacob are waiting for their flights, and also Jay, their publicist, is there. Jay, I don't think we've seen Jay that much. Jay's going to be a big part of this, from here on out. You're going to see Jay a lot. Jay's next few episodes, Jay's going to be in there as much as Mark, as much as road manager Mark, and as much as Lou. Jacobs has a conversation about the vibe in the house changing, but he's wearing. The one thing I was looking at this is he was talking about that's really not a big deal. What it was this was distracting me. He was wearing this beret backwards. It basically looked like one that the Pearl Jam's bassist Jeff Ament or Ament, I think that's how to pronounce his name. He used to wear these funky hats during the 10 era when they were doing back when they actually still did videos. They stopped doing videos for a while in the 90s, but when they first came out, they were doing videos, and Jeff Ament always wore these kind of weird, funky hats, and it kind of just the way that he was wearing the backwards beret, it kind of looked like that. Page turn. Jacob now then talks about how Ikaika is being torn and his concerns about him being in the group because, Jacob's all in. Like Jacob wants to be in a group, wants to be, successful in music, and he does think Ikaika is talented. So we go to the contestants' homes. We go to Ikaika's school. She says he wants to be a doctor. Uh, Brian lives in San Francisco. Ikaika, by the way, lives in Hawaii. I think I've mentioned that before, but yeah, Ikaika lives in Hawaii. I think he's going to the University of Hawaii, if I'm not mistaken. Brian lives in San Francisco. Um, he's kind of been the episodes are starting to air while they're being in boot camp or being I guess you could call it boot camp, being in rehearsals in Florida, and I guess his family is being or people are telling his family about it. Um, Ashley lives in Redding, California. We basically just get a brief background of all the contestants. Uh, Ashley's stepdad is not a fan of this, of him being in a band. Uh, Ike's dad is a radio DJ. We meet his brothers. He has two older brothers. One's named Haku. He has a master's in business administration. This is going to kind of be important going forward. Uh, Ashley, stepdad, thinks the music is a negative industry. He tells Ashley he wants nothing to do with it. He says, talk to mom. His stepdad says, hey, look, I love you, but I don't want anything to do with this. And that's the end of the episode. Basically, you just see the guys kind of going back home. And now episode 8, I should say the last few minutes is just them, kind of a background on the kids. Episode 8, the boys return back to Orlando or O-Town. The contracts are not signed. Dun, dun, dun. Jacob contacted an attorney, and boys are scared about the contracts. The royalty percentages are really low. There's issues about merchandise. There's issues about who controls the songwriting. The attorney states won't be happy with contract if they're successful. Like basically, these are contracts to screw you over. Luke calls the house. Paul wants to talk to him, but they say they'll talk tomorrow. Paul tells Trevor that he's quitting because it's not right for him. Trevor wants to change his mind. Ikaika's still on the island. He doesn't like the contract. He thought he was going to be making decent money, but he found out that the 40,000 advance for the first album is going to be split 5 ways. So 40,000 divided by 5 is 8,000 per member. Uh, Ikaika feels trapped and feels like a slave. Then we go to the boys and Jay, or the boys are still at the house, which is everybody but Ikaika, and Jay, the publicist. They're watching Jon Norris on MTV News back at the 1550 MTV 1550. That's where they used to shoot like all the TRLs. That was like kind of the main studio. Um, they're talking about the lawsuits of NSync and against Lou. Lou says they're the best of friends. JC Chavez of NSYNC. They have a quote from him, and this is how he describes Lou. I'm quoting JC, by the way. Picture of an unscrupulous, greedy, and sophisticated businessman who posed as an unselfish, loving father figure who took advantage of our trust. We will not be puppets held by. I'm sorry. The other quote is, "Will not be puppets on a string held by Lou." Bye, bye, bye. No strings attached. Mike says it's a sketchy situation. Paul has a meeting with Lou, quits in front of Lou. Paul was obviously one of the other contestants. He was the guy who was 21 and wanted to fuck, but didn't. He said, "I'm 21." I translated that he wanted to fuck. According to Lou, Paul called him wanting assurances that he would be in the group. Lou said, "I can't give guarantees." Paul wants to be in the industry, but not in the group. Fellas don't understand. Page turn. Lou talks about his appearance on news programs like 60 Minutes in 2020, and how last half talks about the bad things, like him screwing over his clients. Now, he also says, I love this. This is my favorite quote from Lou Pearlman in this series so far. He says, everything is settled, and he's been in business for 25 years doing fair deals. They honestly should have had a laugh track right after he said that. This is so not true. Jacob says any record deal from any record company will give you a bad deal. That is true. Your first contract, every first contract from for every recording artist, regardless of genre, is usually pretty bad. Unless the only time it's really good is like unless you have like severe, incredible leverage, like Master P. He had got a great contract for Universal because he had leverage. He was already doing distribution. He was able to get the contract favorable terms of his contract, even though Master P's artists say they got screwed by him. But that's another story for another time. Just to let you know how a contract worked, a recording contract worked in the 1990s. I know I'm going off tangents here and going off of other sources, but I just want to give you a quick. Now what Lou's doing is actually what you'd call production deals. So he's actually like investing his own money and then having that label signed to a record company and then taking the profits that he agrees with the label. So I just wanted to get into give you a quick background on how 90s contracts work. I'm reading from Hitless Wonder. This is a book by a man by the name of Joe Osterich. I apologize for mispronouncing that name. He was in a band called Watershed. They were signed to Epic Records in the mid-90s. So I'm just going to read you a quick excerpt of how record deals work. So I'm going to start it. I'm starting at page 160. Today's record contracts have changed to reflect the advent of digital music, but back before MP3s and iPods, they worked like this. Epic agreed to fund Watershed for $250,000. Watershed is his band that he was the bass player for. And this is cleverly called, and they call this cleverly, the fund. In return, we deliver a finished album which would use the fund to pay for. Once you added up studio time, tape costs, producer fees, engineers' fees, and food and other living expenses, it is common for bands to spend $100,000 or more making a major label album. However, we have a huge incentive to keep costs down. Any money left over after making the record was ours to keep. So if we spend $100,000 on the record, there'd be $150,000 for us on the back end. But we wouldn't be getting a check for that $150,000 either. By the terms of our management deal, 10% of our gross income went to one of our managers, and 10% went to another manager. They had a management deal with two managers, so that's $15,000 each. Also, $25,000 of the $250,000 was earmarked for tour support, so it could only be used to pay for road expenses. Still, as long as we kept the recording costs under control, there'd be a small fortune left over for the band to split. And here's the sweetest part of the deal. Even if Watershed never sold a single CD, we wouldn't have to pay Epic back. They'd take the $250,000 on the chin. We'd walk with our share of the leftover money. The not so sweet part was that we wouldn't see any royalties on the sale of the CD until we had paid Epic back their original $250,000. These royalties are called points, as in percentage points, of the retail price of the CD. Our deal with Epic gave us 14 points. So 14 points of every $14.98 disc. That's how much CDs cost back in the 90s, was $15, or $2.10 would be ours. Except all 14 points wouldn't be ours. Big name producers typically take 4 points. So once their producer took his 4 points, that would drop us down to 10 points. Plus the recording studio that we recorded our demo at, they basically recorded a demo before they got their album deal. So the that record recording studio, it's called the Power Station, would collect a point as payment for the demo sessions. The guy who engineered the demo would take half a point. The engineer on the new record would take another half a point. This would reduce our royalty rate to 6% to 8%. I'm sorry. Factor in the cut to our managers, and we'd make more like 6% or 90 cents of each $14.98 CD we sold. But again, we wouldn't see our 90 cents per disc until Epic had been paid back the original $250,000 fund, but not out of the 86% of the retail price that was their share, but out of the 6% that went to us. This means that at 90 cents per CD, Watershed need to sell 277,777 albums, over halfway to gold, before we would have recouped our debt. At the point of recoupment, Epic would not only have been paid back their original $250,000 investment, they would also have taken in $3,578,545 of profit from the 86 points they kept. Essentially, the company had placed a $250,000 bet on a racecourse called Watershed. If we sold well, they stood to win the monster payout. But the odds were long, about 10 to 1, because only 10% of major label CDs sold enough copies to recoup. Bottom line, the labels didn't score often, but when they did, they scored big. Now I'll reference another thing. There's actually a documentary from 30 Seconds to Mars called, I think it's called Artifact. I think that's what it's called. They actually go more into depth of how record companies screw over their clients. Back to the show. Lou says need contracts wrapped up by Monday. Put lawyers to bed. Lou calls it Kaika. Lou says this could be profitable and lucrative career. Win-win for everybody. Let's discuss and sign when everybody is happy. Fellas decide when to go home. Kaika hears, hey kid, you're going to be big. I'm a big time manager. I'm sponsoring this. You're going to be big, kid. Kaika comes back to the house, but he brings his older brother Haku, who has the master's in business administration. Road manager Mark is annoyed by his presence. He doesn't say it, but you can just see in his face why the fuck is this guy here? And then we're back at the house. We see Ikaika and Haku kicking each other. I mean, they're working out and they're basically kicking each other pretty hard. And Mike points out how they're working out. Dude, look how crazy that is. The boys say goodbye to Paul. They do a group a cappella version of Love Potion number 9 before they eat cake. And honestly, this a cappella version sounds pretty good. It's actually they're improving. This actually sounds pretty nice. Jacob says you could see that Paul didn't want to leave, but he had to. You could see it in his eyes that he didn't want to leave, but he had to. Paul says he loves the boys, but his heart wasn't in it. So we have 7 finalists left, and we're back at rehearsal. Ashley and Jacob both wanted Paul in their 5. Tomorrow is the decision time. And then there's the singing coach, Mark. I guess that's not really important. They perform All for Love again with singing coach Mark there. They sound better, but they're still not really ready for prime time. There's a group meeting with the band lawyer. Jacob says the contracts, the disagreement with Lou about the contracts is bringing the guys together, because if they don't sign it, they have leverage. Not really. Lou comes in. I mean, Lou could basically say, hey, I'm getting a different group of guys. Lou comes in. Everybody agrees to contract, but tomorrow's a holiday. It's New Year's Eve, so it won't be finalized until after the weekend. So my guess here is the time frame of the filming of this was probably between October and December of 1999, which means the decisions won't be made of Final 5 until after New Year's Eve, and everybody is invited to the New Year's Eve party. Woohoo! Haku, Ikaika's older brother, like I said, had a master's in business administration, talks about flight and going back to Hawaii for one because Ikaika has one more test, but he's also going home because of contract. Kaika says he likes everybody there, but can't make cut until contract is signed, and can't sign until lawyer is okay with it. Ikaika tells Eric, according to not to lawyer, um, Kaika tells Eric that according to his lawyer, not a lot has changed with the contract, and he's got to go. He has to go home. Jacob is annoyed at Kaika for going home because they're all here. Kaika's like, I don't want to be anybody's slave. I'd rather be at home until this gets solved. And that is the end of episode 8. We leave episode 8 with Kaika wanting to going home because he doesn't like the contracts, and I don't blame him. Those contracts end up being really shitty. So, Kaika, I feel you. I feel you, buddy. But at the same time, I mean, you know, once you get like news footage of Lou Pearlman, basically his two biggest artists saying, "Hey, you know what? Don't sign. This guy's a shyster. Don't sign with him." That's probably a big red flag. But hey, that's that's the music business. Unfortunately, you're getting screwed one way or the other. But anyways, that's it for episodes 7 and 8. I've realized listening back to my earlier podcast, I say and a lot, and I need to work on that. And I mean you can actually play a drinking game between my my uhs, and my page turns. You literally get fucked up by within like 15 minutes of listening to me. So, anyways, that's it for episodes 7 and 8. We'll go into episodes 9 and 10 after this, obviously. And anyways, you guys have a good day, and I can't wait to can't wait to talk to you next week. Or I should say later this week, even though I'm recording this last week, if that makes any sense. Anyways, you guys have a great one. Have a good night.